Our solution to these challenges is to come up with a digital representation of the communication network that can provide to its users the same interfaces and the same capabilities as a corresponding physical network would. So what is EXata? Very simply, EXata is network in a box. EXata takes the communication network, represents it digitally, such that any component that interacts with this network can interact with the digital representation exactly as it would with the physical network. So let me give a series of examples to illustrate this point. For instance, we may need to deploy a set of applications, including command and control applications, streaming video application, voice over IP applications, web browsing applications, and so on and so forth. It is today possible to take those applications as they exist in an unmodified manner, connect them directly to our digital representation of, let's say, a WNW or a JTRS network of the future. Second instance of how it could be used. If we need to experiment with how a currently deployed ePlus network would interoperate with a WNW network in the future, we can take an EXata representation of the WNW network and hook it up with a physically deployed ePlus network and then run the same end-to-end applications that I was referring to earlier on this hybrid hardware-in-the-loop network. As a third example, suppose we would like to experiment with how to manage such a future network or a hybrid network. We can take existing or proposed or operational software, network management software, deploy that on the virtual representation of this future force network so that the network management software or a human signal officer can begin to interact with this digital representation in the same manner that they would with a corresponding physical network. The idea is then to create digitally what would eventually exist physically, but be able to do it today in advance of deployment so we can begin to experiment, analyze, test and evaluate, develop software, begin to do training, all of these applications using the virtual representation. Clearly, the great benefit of having EXata or having a virtual representation or this network in a box is it is much cheaper once we have a virtual representation of this network to be able to do the analysis. We can begin to do it today instead of waiting until we have sufficient number of units available. And most importantly, we can do it under a variety of operating conditions, whether it be urban environments, rural environments, mixed environments. The environments in which we deploy these can be rendered digitally, and the operation of these networks can hence be evaluated in those corresponding environments today using EXata.